Good evening, everybody. I think I might have messed up the game. Hopefully we'll get this fixed. Excellent. This is actually a better setup than I had yesterday. So welcome, everybody. We are returning to Assassin's Creed 3. So I think we're getting near the end. It feels like sort of the end of the opening sequences. I will admit I am finding the game a little bit of a letdown from the high of Assassin's Creed Revelations. That isn't really a particularly original take. I know there seems to be a consensus that this is a less popular Assassin's Creed game. I think the one thing I noticed was the opening puts you through a lot of cutscenes and doesn't let you do a whole lot. And I sort of felt the two big action set pieces seem to be ruined either by little bugs or just generally a lack of energy. So I'm thinking like the fire ship from Revelations and comparing that to the storm. It didn't quite do, like, one felt quite low energy by comparison. But I will grant this is a very good looking Assassin's Creed game. It's a really interesting time period, so I am definitely willing to give it the benefit of the doubt, put it through its paces, and we'll come out the other end. I mean, at the very least, I wanted to get the original trilogy played for myself. And of course, it was Independence Day yesterday, so it seemed an appropriate title to pick. Without further ado, let's continue the game. All right. I was really interested in the opening sequence at the size of the crowds. They don't seem to be taking advantage of that right now. But maybe we'll be treated to some nice visuals before too long. I did also notice the controls are a little bit different, so it's taken some getting used to compared to playing Assassin's Creed Revelations, but it's a little unfair to criticize the game just on the basis of the fact that the controls are different. They're quite a bit more simple than Assassin's Creed Revelations, and it feels like they were built a little bit more for keyboard rather than just adapting a controller onto a keyboard.
Gentlemen, I believe I found the solution to our problem. Or rather, Odysseus has.
How do you? Are you a new guy?
The Greek hero, you lobcock.
Allow me to explain. We enter Silas' fort under the pretext of kinship. Once
Trojan
inside,
horse.
Bring our trap, free the captives, kill the slaver.
Dodgy, dodgy. I like it.
Then, let us begin. First, we need to find ourselves a convoy. Convoy should be here soon. We'll attack on my signal.
Understood, sir.
If we time this right, we can catch them all unawares.
Word arrives from France that the Baron of Montesquieu all Englishmen.
this?
1,000 pardons, sirs. Seems we've had ourselves an unhappy little accident.
Get it sorted, and quickly.
Of course, my lord.
You guys are in big trouble when I reload. Oof. Oh, you know what? I've completely forgotten the controls again. Oh well. I don't think anybody's here, so nobody will notice I'm
Williams,
screwing it up.
Vanguard. Let no man reach us.
What about me?
You and John will follow from a distance and keep watch over us. I'll signal you when I have need of your services.
Milady?
We're here to help you, along with those held inside Southgate Fort.
Free me.
Not until we're inside the gate. I can't chance an inspection of the gate going wrong. I'll see you safe. You have my word. Do you know anything of Silas' operation? How many men we might expect? The nature of their defenses?
This is an interesting bit of history. This is one of the many wars in the long-standing British versus French rivalry. Well, you might call it a rivalry. I'd call it a battle of wits with an unarmed country. This particular war being over who would come out as the biggest colonial power. Of course, it wasn't enough that the British and the French fight one another. They convinced another number of North American indigenous nations to join the conflict as well, hence the name French and Indian War. The war started in the colonies, but it spread to Europe, where it was known as the 7 Years' War. Before you pointed out, yes, I know that the dates add up to more than 7 years. The conflict started in 1754, but war wasn't officially declared until 1756. But well done for spotting it, you mathlete. I bet you were popular at school. George Washington had the honor of starting the actual fighting, under orders of course. He was sent to create a fort in a disputed territory. While he was doing that, he crossed paths with a French patrol. Washington attacked, the French retaliated, the British followed up by sending 2 full regiments of regulars to the fight, and so it began. The British fought a losing battle until about 1758, when they got a new prime minister, who decided funding the war effort was a priority. Probably because of the whole French thing, or possibly because of the whole French thing. Maybe he ate a bag big at once. With the added support, the British, along with the indigenous allies and colonial militia, began to gain ground slowly but surely. Eventually, the French were driven out of almost all of their territory north of the Caribbean, something we in Britain celebrate with a special holiday. We call it Every Day All Year. So the British won, but they were left with huge war debts. They tried to pay these off with taxes levied from the colonists they defended from the French, who would have had them all eating onions and saying, "Oui, sir, non, sir," before you knew it. The colonists objected, leading to a series of protests, which were part of the unrest that led to the American Revolution. Talk about gratitude. Zut alors! So, of course, we talked about this yesterday, and it is possibly the fact that Canada was taken and French no longer presented a threat to the American colony, well, the British colonies in the Americas, that potentially led to the Revolutionary War. So it's important to read books, not just the Animus. Assuming, of course, you take Draper's account for it, but it is a very good book. For those of you who don't recall it, it is called A Struggle for Power, The American Revolution by Theodore Draper. I got it, unfortunately. It is from a library. It seems that it was as part of their discard pile. So the Harris County Public Library saw no need to have some American history, which is a shame. Grenadiers. Grenadiers were originally the soldiers in charge of throwing grenades, hence the name. They were chosen for being tall, muscular, and fearless. Not only did they need the strength to throw the grenades far enough to actually injure the enemy, they had to be brave or stupid enough to stay in the front lines of battle to do it. Grenadiers were called upon to be fast, effective assault troops, helping with things like storming beaches during sieges, the standard easy jobs that you're likely to get you killed. By the mid-18th century, grenades had fallen out of favor, but grenadiers were still regarded as elite regiments, called on to guard the right flank of their battalions, and still to do all the other dangerous work that they'd gotten a reputation for. An interesting note on the hats. They were made high and narrow so as not to get in the way while you were lobbing grenades, which is a good feature to have. Eventually, the mitre hat became part of the standard dress uniform in numerous armies. It's also possible Grenadiers just really dig the idea of looking like the Pope. History's mute on that point. The editorializing is
To him if you were given your own escort.
warming on me.
Sir, we've enemies ahead. Shall I engage them?
No. Let Jonathan and Thomas take care of it.
As you wish.
I wish you'd trust us. Though I suppose it's only natural for you to be wary. So be it.
I'm a little confused about sort of the popping in and the sort of the jumping around some of these models are doing. I don't know if it's just they didn't bother to support the game for very long after its release, or if this is something limited to the PC version or not. I normally give them credit for not. Normally give them credit for having slightly better adaptations, at least with my experience. But such they proceed to launch the attack before being discovered.
Engage the enemy!
Apparently they felt I was spending a little too much time talking about the pop-in and not enough time interacting with the game. We will continue to admire the...
Goddamn dogs.
You, in the car. I need to inspect your car.
Just want to give it some time to get in close.
Let no man reach us!
Looks like you're to meet the Reaper.
That would have been rather nice if they killed the guy before the dog, but...
Aha! Bringing fresh meat, eh? Come here. I want to take a look at your silence.
On your guard, men!
Of course.
Only say the word, and I'll cut them down.
Me and you. Who's your officer?
Hopefully we can get a little bit more distance on them before we get some suspicion. Right.
Engage the enemy!
Like you're to meet the Reaper.
Yeah, see that... I mean, so they're corpses, right? Like, it's not the end of the world that they vanish off, but
All clear!
the game's clearly been able to handle a big crowd before, and it's kind of uncharacteristic. It's not something we've seen in the game before, but that's fine. We can live with it. The story and the gameplay is what matters, so... I guess this is also one of the first game... I think this had a brand new engine for it. I think that's where they'd added a bunch of environmental effects or not, but I haven't really done the... I don't research these things before I play them, so...
Evening, gentlemen.
State your business.
Delivery for Silas.
Go on then.
See? I'm freeing you just as I said I would. Now, if you'll allow me to explain. Let her go.
But she'll give us away.
No, she won't.
What's the plan?
Free the captives and avoid detection.
What of Silas?
He dies.
Alright, before I do too much in the game, I am going to take a second here and see if I can get the subtitles on, because I thought I had enabled that in the... I thought I'd enabled that in the game, or in the settings when I set it up. That's a general? My bad. Sorry, guys. Hopefully that will give people what they're looking for. Alright, find and kill the general and perform 3 stealth kills, it looks like. And as always, we will read the Animus. In the 18th century, the only land route into Boston was across a narrow strip of land called the Boston Neck. One often talks about the heart of Africa, and of course, or the bosom of Europe, how wonderful that Boston gets a neck. Fortifications were built across the neck to protect the city from a land attack. I suppose a bit like a heavy necklace or a handsome neck brace. When the siege of Boston began in 1775, Governor Gage ordered that the fortifications be expanded and strengthened. They became known as Gage's Lines. Starting in the 19th century, land was added to the Boston Neck, widening it to make room for the city to grow, and presumably to ease traffic on and off the island, since Boston is no longer in danger of attack from the countryside. Alright. Perform stealth assassinations from a corner spot. Alright, so I'm not 100% sure how that works, but we can maybe find out. Oh, that's cool. I keep forgetting that you can hide in bushes in this game now.
Greetings. How fares the watch? Who are you? Thomas Smith, newly recruited. Arrived from London just last week, in fact.
Then you ought to patrol with us.
So said Silas. I assume it's all rather straightforward. Watch for disturbances, ensure order is maintained. Merchandise?
You don't know, you don't need to. As soon as you patrol, stay out of our way.
I'm not quite sure what that accomplishes, but I feel better having done it. Alright. So these guys are in pairs, unfortunately, so it's not so easy to do a quick corner attack, but we'll see if see if we can make this work. Yeah, that's not suspicious at all. The guy who you've got an eye on immediately runs into the bushes. Uh-oh. Sorry, guys. Nope, seems like the game's back. Alright, that looks like that was not the fabled corner kill. I think I will just give up on trying to get that done. I can't remember what the other goal was. Find and kill the general. Oh, you know what? I could probably use Eagle Sense for that.
Oi, fellas. Apologies for me tardiness. Carter had me working late.
You know Carter?
Well, who do you think got me this post? We're like brothers, me and him. Now, what did Silas want us doing? We're to rough up.
Ah, damn it. Oh, and that's a full desync. Okay. Good to know.
Signal when you're ready to strike.
This is actually the one thing that I probably could have done without. Especially from Revelations, are the missions where you sort of get detection is sufficient for to lose the mission. Should be able to pull this guy in.
Yeah.
I think the funny thing is the first time I lose because of a, just carelessness or a detection, I tend to do the mission a little more recklessly, just because I don't want to sneak around with. Well, I got my corner kill. Just didn't appreciate there was somebody walking up behind me.
Signal when you're ready to strike.
So I wonder if I can get one of these patrols to come by. Ah, there's the general. All right. So I think the corner.
I don't follow.
Lieutenant Wilkins?
No, man named Cosgrove. Lieutenant Cosgrove.
I've not heard of him. Cosgrove? Is he the chap with the gammy leg?
That's the one. That's the very man.
Saw action at Cologne. Memory serves. What about
Blew it. I think that one was just my impatience. It's funny, that doesn't feel like this is a particularly difficult mission, but my desire to get
Signal when you're ready to strike.
the bonus sync is my undoing. Alright, we'll wait till the general goes so we can get the other guy around the corner. Oh, for God's sake. So I'm guessing just whistling isn't an option at this point.
Signal when you're ready to strike.
That was another thing that I didn't comment on last cast. I thought the eavesdropping thing was kind of interesting, but it seems like that's more so to show off some mechanics around audio, and that seems to be something that affects the. I'll try one more. All right, this feels like it should work. Alright, it should work on the general. And then I just need to pull one more. Nice. Screw these captives. They're not worth saving. So I think I'm getting the idea of the officers now. So the idea is that now your stealth missions, you basically have the ignorant grunt that is not going to care too much about what you do. Whereas officers, I mean, as it described in the game, right? A bit sharper, and the idea here is that this is... So the environment is full of people who can potentially hurt you. These guys are totally innocuous if you behave yourself, but if you screw up the mission, then you're in trouble. Gee. All right, let's see if I can make something of this. There we go, full sync. So I sort of get the idea here that I think it's actually a neat way that they've improved the sneaking mission. So like it feels like the previous games, you'd sort of have to mind your behavior more or less constantly, and sort of you'd have this complex that was full of people, and if you stepped out of line once, in front of anyone, you'd be in trouble, and potentially you'd lose the mission. Now what it's doing is there's definitely the credible threat. Like, you're going to have a bad time if you get caught.
Oi, fellas. Apologies for me.
But what I think is so interesting about this one is that you don't need to focus on everything. What you need to focus on instead are these priority targets, the officers. I think it's a nice way of making these. I think it's a nice way of making these kinds of sneaking missions to be a little bit more interesting and also a little bit more credible when you have disguises. So. So assuming I don't completely goof up the last officer. I mean, he's at a little bit of a choke point. It's very obvious why they put him there. But we should be able to... We should be able to make it. So probably would have been smart to get him while his back was turned, but okay, got what we needed there. Oh, there's definitely an officer there. That was almost a problem. And all right. I'm thinking we take this guy out for safety.
An hour of quiet was all I asked. Instead, I'm awakened not 10 minutes later by this cacophonous madness. I expect an explanation, and it had best be good. How? How did this happen? My precious merchandise set free! It's unacceptable! Rest assured, I'll have the heads of those responsible, but first we clean up this mess! Seal the fort, kill any who try to escape. I don't care if they be one of us or one of them. To approach the gate is to be made a corpse. Am I understood?
Push them back.
When a fireling is about to fire, press space to use a nearby enemy as... Oh, cool. What the... Okay. Remember, E for countering.
There's still time for you to play. Well, now what? For the order! Where did you receive your training? Did you
Alright.
receive any training? I'll deal with this, back room. You shall
Oof. Yeah, kind of hard to... Jesse Quill, thank you very much for that, host. Kind of hard to grab a body to defend against the firing line when there weren't any bodies. I believe the Lady Jess is currently getting exercise. I will admit, I really do like the movements of the basically the actions when you're armed with the musket. I think they look particularly stylish. I like the use of the bayonet. Not quite what I intended to do, but good try.
Stop the interloper! He's the one responsible! Kill him! I'll fillet you like a cock. Who are you?
Name's Hatham Kenway. You don't know me, but I believe the two of you are well acquainted.
I made a promise to you, Cyrus. One I intend to keep.
Ah, that is a very nice touch. I do think there's a tendency to let the monologues run a little too long on these things. After the assassination, I'm okay with, because in that case it's an abstraction. But in the case of the heat of the moment,
What happens now?
I think that was a nice touch.
But not for very long, I suspect.
Alright, so I wasn't paying attention to the avoid the... So it looks like there's 3 for every mission, so I should be paying a little bit closer attention. And sequence 2 is done. If I could, I'd like to get through sequence 3 today. I think in reality...
It's been several weeks now since we freed the Mohawk prisoners from captivity. I had hoped their leader might make contact, but there's been only silence. My men grow restless. They want to know what comes next, and I do not have an answer. Lee alone remains active, pursuing leads, however slight. He stalks the city streets and scouts the bordering woods, hopeful that he might make contact with one of those we saved. There was a woman there that night. It was she who helped the others to safety. If we can find her, I believe I'll have my answers. So, I watch and wait, hopeful that my true mission might finally begin.
But yeah, if I had my choice, this is really nice. It's a nice look on the scenery. If I had my choice, I'd get through sequence 3 tonight, but I'm not quite sure how long it is, so no promises. We'll do our best, though. Let me just take a quick second. One thing that I'm noticing, too, there seems to be a lot fewer little side missions. Now, it may be because we're not into the main story yet, but I'm not quite sure what the main location is supposed to be. But I do just need one quick second here before I go any further, so forgive me for a moment to play on my phone. Okay. But yeah, so it seems like basically we go to this, we go through the door each time. One thing I think I will do this time, we did have, at least one viewpoint that we found on a mission. So the way I tend to like to do that, so I could, when I did Revelations, I spent the time sort of wandering through Constantinople quite a bit. There is a hope that I have in terms of I want to get this done by a particular date. So I might be a little more reluctant to sort of stop and smell the roses like I did on Revelations. But if I definitely don't intend to rush through this game. This is a really nicely... I just really like the look of this. Not quite what I intended to do. But yeah, if I do get through this a little bit quicker, I sort of intend to I intend to do so in order to have another I don't know, another treat for you guys if you like Assassin's Creed. So, oops, I'm so used to pushing V for that. Oh wait, we should be able to jump here. Alright, now I don't know what the deal with these are. Central Boston letters. Oh, interesting. So there are side missions. Committees of correspondence. Since the American Revolution happened in the dark days before there was an internet, and even before telephones, organizing colonial opposition to the British was a little tricky. I don't want to make you cry, but these clowns didn't even have dial-up. The solution was to send out riders bearing letters to inform colonists in other areas what was going on. These became known as committees of correspondence, correspondence being a fancy name for letters. If you did not know this, I am amazed that you have even read this far. Actually, I'm amazed that you even can read this far. Samuel Adams created one of the first committees of correspondence in Boston in 1772. In particular, he wanted to keep people outside of Boston informed about town meetings, so the governor couldn't invite only his friends to meetings. That would be less a meeting, more a dinner party. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Adams' committee worked so well that everybody started doing it. Eventually, all of the colonies had their own committees, focused on presenting a united front against the British-imposed taxes and supporting boycotts of British goods. Really, Adams should have patented the idea. He could have made a fortune. Oh, we have more info. Did we not read the Boston Neck already? We did indeed.
The Boston Gazette humbly proposes.
Alright, so let's see what the deal is with this. Yeah, there's more people popping in. I'll try not to point it out each time I,
You have my everlasting gratitude, sir.
That's quite the response to getting a letter. Guess it's a Patriot letter.
Thank you. Thank you.
The hell's the last one? I also like the snow. Oop. As much as I would love to discharge a pistol in the middle of the street, I'm not entirely sure the,
Back, I say.
not entirely sure the local constabulatory might appreciate that. I guess I should drop off the letter. And we've got some more Animus to read. If you guys like reading, that is good news for you. If you guys came here for gameplay, apologies. I will read as quickly as decency allows. Alright, I quite like side missions like that. Quick, to the point, you learn a little bit about history, and they don't distract from the main plot. I will read about this building once I take a peek. Alright, that thing I'm not crazy about. So clearly there's only one place I want to go when I'm on top of this building, and yet I feel like every time I've gotten onto one of these roofs, it hasn't sort of registered the action I want it to do. All right. Oh, for God's sake. The Old State House. This building housed the Massachusetts government from 1713 to 1798. Before the Revolution, that would have meant the governor, his advisors, and the elected assembly. Of course, by elected, I mean elected by white male property owners, since they were the only people who had the right to vote. The assembly also had rather limited power. The governor had a veto over anything that they decided, and on occasion dissolved the assembly when they didn't vote his way. Less a governor, more a dictator. In 1767, a gallery was installed above the meeting floor here, so the general public could watch the legislature at work. This is a very novel idea at the time. Of course, some of the representatives possibly regretted the decision later, when crowds used the area to heckle those who voted pro-British. Then again, perhaps that was the point all along. The government moved out of the building to a bigger space in 1798, and the old building was turned over to merchants, including a wine cellar and a wig maker, making it the colonial equivalent of a shopping mall, though one that mainly dealt in wine and wigs. The old meeting house. The bells in this church rang out in the hours leading up to the Boston Massacre as crowds were gathering to taunt the soldiers in front of the State House. In Boston at the time, the church bells were rung and there was a fire, so people ran into the streets to see what was happening. That swelled the crowd, making tensions between the people and the British soldiers that much worse. It ended, of course, with the soldiers firing into the crowd, killing 5 people. And this concludes our lesson on how church bells could be used to incite riots in colonial America. That feels like a really important and highly dramatic moment that probably should show up in this game. I don't know, though. My American history is definitely not as good as it should be. And I feel like, again, I'm not 100% clear on what this game is. So I wasn't aware that this was the main character. I always thought the main character was a guy named Connor. Although I did notice there was obviously a moment between Hatham and the, I'm assuming, Mohawk woman. So it's possible, I mean, obviously because the Assassin's Creed series is about ancestry, that this could be sort of a prologue, and that we play the offspring of that union. I won't spend the whole night syncing characters, but God, I really like these views though. I just kind of wanted to get stuff in the immediate area, so we'll maybe do this one here, and then we'll head home. Nope, no point in doing that. We've got a haystack. So I definitely spent a little bit of time complaining about some things about the game, but there's a couple things that I really like. So first of all, the animations are superb. I tremendously enjoy a lot of the kills, especially anything that's done sort of in the heat of the moment. So when you're chasing down a thief or something like that, and you like that they're basically the red purse icon that shows up every once in a while. The kill I got on him was incredibly satisfying, just in terms of sort of how kinetic it was. Like I mentioned before, I really like the sort of the animations when you're fighting with the musket, the way you use the bayonet. I'm really not at all fond of using the weapons. I think it's smart that they made it so that like they take a long time to reload and they're not very efficient weapons. But it feels like you're set up with some situations where you are supposed to use them. And I really do not like using the musket at all as a ranged weapon. I absolutely love using it as a melee weapon though. I think it's cooler than the sword and the retractable blade. Maybe that's me though. The one thing I will say, I mean, I can't think of a single Assassin's Creed game that I've played that hasn't just delivered in spades on this, but I absolutely love being able to go through old historical areas and just drink them in as you play. And the moments with the moments on the tops of the buildings, the synchronization points or whatever, are There's a chance for more cool animations. Anyways, that sort of stuff I really like.
Hello, Charles. Any luck finding our mystery woman?
Word is she's been stirring up trouble just outside the city in a town called Lexington.
Well, then that's where we'll begin our search. I'll meet you there.
All right. I guess I'll take the streets like a normal person. I've noticed everything's... It seems like the streets are a bit wider than in the previous game, so it's not as easy to just sort of leap from building to building. That, or I'm just... I mean, I'm used to kind of pushing down the right mouse button and just running wherever the hell that I want. I'm sure there's probably a little bit more reasoning to movement, but it feels like there's fewer... there's either fewer opportunities or less need. By the way, guys, I feel like there's chat going on that I'm missing. Oh my goodness, guys, I'm so sorry. Guys, I've been, I don't know why, but my chat that I've had open has been completely frozen. I thought I was casting to like a non-responsive chat the whole time. I didn't read a single thing that you guys were doing. So guys, Unknown Brigade, howdy Chalk. Are you streaming this from console, PC? Streaming from PC. D-Raven, I liked Hatham much more than Connor. Okay, so Connor is in the game. Jesse Quill was getting exercise. You're home now. By the way, this is like messages that are like half an hour old. Love how no one questions the fact that someone is chilling on the on top of that tower. And I think that's everyone. So obviously, on the very odd chance that you were here, I didn't talk, or you were here, not here anymore. And you're watching the VOD. Apologies for not replying right away. But now that I see Johnny will appreciate that I did this. But yeah, sorry guys. I must have been very frustrating to watch. But I guess now I get to say nice things about Jesse Quill for hosting me, right? Is the mission really that far out? All right, well, we're going to get some... Oh, first thing, we're going to get an almanac. I will read about King's Chapel in a second. That makes me feel a lot better, actually, because I was going to say, it's like, well, you know what, if I have an hour where... you know, nobody says anything, I'll probably just pack it in early. So now that there's a pulse, now that I know there's a pulse, you guys get a little bit of a longer cast. Yeah, I mean, that's to me the mark of the, like, everybody on Twitch is an amateur. Well, not everybody on Twitch. Most people on Twitch are amateurs. So I don't want to say the mark of an amateur, but the mark of somebody who maybe doesn't take this quite as seriously as I would expect a caster to, would be somebody who...
You there! Get down!
Oh, go soak your head. Oop. Where's the page? You're kidding me. Give me the page. I wonder if it lets you read anything from poor Richard Zalvanach. But yeah, so to me, like, whether it's so I mean, I used to have to evaluate applications for a stream team. But like, just in terms of watching, like, the way I see it is this, like, I don't expect people to show up. It's nice when people do. I hope I'm entertaining enough to merit people returning, but I'm not owed an audience. Nobody is. It's something that needs to be earned. And my view is that if somebody can't be bothered to be entertaining when nobody shows up, why should I trust them to be entertaining when there is an audience there? Like, I guess the big thing for me is I don't understand what the trade-off is. What the, you know, it's like, okay, you got to give me the incentive and then I'll bring the fun. It's like, well, you know, I'm not willing to take the risk. You know, I hate being bored. So if you're not willing to put the time in to show me when I show up that you're a caster worth watching, I'm not going to put in the time to wait until you become interesting. Now, again, I might be missing out on some talent, right? But it just seems to me that there are too many casters out there, and life is too short to spend the time waiting and helping somebody figure out their voice on Twitch. If somebody asks me, I'll gladly help them. But, like, I'm not going to go into some random cast and, you know, and start talking in hopes of finding out that the guy is fun to watch. So, well, thank you very much for saying so, Subject Panic. And more importantly, thank you very much for showing up. But yeah, like I said, I mean, there's no shortage of streamers. Obviously, I definitely do not like being the kind of person who, you know, spends the entire stream gossiping about other casters. So I would refrain from giving any particular names. There's a side of me that's tempted to just clear out these two views and then head down this way. But there's definitely some casters that I can think of that are ones who are largely relying on past glory and are not actually that fun to watch. And I suspect if you were to if you were to deactivate their chat, or if there were to be something to happen that would prevent their connection with the chat, you would actually learn how little they bring to the cast. Now again, that's not really that's not really none of my business. People will watch what they want. But my expectation for myself has always been that when I turn the stream on, unless I have a very specific reason for doing so, I will be giving commentary. And whether or not it's my thought process or it's my, you know, what I find interesting about the game, or oops. There's any number of things that you can talk about. Sorry, I just gotta turn my... Oh, for fuck's sake. Why does this game force this decision on me? Love streamers like yourself, very down to earth, enjoyable to watch or VOD live. I really appreciate that, Unknown Brigade. I mean, don't get... And this is an important thing here, right? Like, it is very easy to perceive the sort of things that I said as being, you know, especially when you know a few casters. Well, that's just dumb. when you know a few casters, or you have sort of an idea of sort of the behind the scenes stories of what's going on Twitch, that kind of dialogue can very quickly turn into sort of just this gossipy nonsense that sometimes makes Twitch an unpleasant place to be on. And like I said, it is up to everybody has their motives for casting. Everybody has the things that they're interested in, which is why I keep these as very general statements. But in terms, the one thing I can speak about are my own motives, and certainly from my perspective, the least that I can do for the people who are going to spend their time here would be to respect their time by giving something to view. And as you guys point out, right, I personally don't think I do good VODs, and that's going to be one of the things that I try and improve over the course of the year, which is half over, but we'll see what we can do. But I'm going to try and get better at making VOD content. All right, let me catch up quickly with chat because we've got Truth and Requiem, which is who's a streamer, actually invited me to do an interview on his channel, and is a member of Jessie Quill's Running Scam, her guild, and yeah, he also says my voice makes his princess parts tingle, which is of course a high compliment from anyone. So, Truth and Requiem, please, System Shock is already taken by economics. Don't make his life choice harder. So in addition to it's free, in addition to also Troll Chalk is not supposed to be on the cast, you fuck. In addition to Truth and Requiem, we have a very dear friend of the cast, Jessie Quill, in the channel. Those dings you were hearing in the background were her scolding me for taking her tracks in Ticket to Ride. I can understand. Oh, did the game hang on? I don't think I've seen the results from the game, or maybe I did and I didn't realize it. But for those of you who didn't hear this before, Jessie Quill and I have been playing a lot of Ticket to Ride. I now have it on my phone, my tablet, my laptop, and my PC. And on Steam alone, I've spent over 2 hours. And I think, Jess, we started playing this. It can't be more than 3 days ago. Anyways, I think there's a lot that can be said about this fact. Jess is somebody who I've played Chaos Reborn with, another kind of good sort of tabletop-ish style game. She's somebody who I really enjoy playing a lot of games with. And unfortunately, it's funny because sometimes frustrations inside of the games have sometimes made that a less than enjoyable sort of setup or experience. But I mean, well, number one, I really like the fact that despite those, she's kind of come back and we've been able to have some good ones. You guys may remember in the history of the cast, we did Saints Row, which I'd love to get back to. Because I know that was something that was really popular, but she's somebody who I really love spending that time off of cast with. And again, when we're talking about sort of respecting people's times and the value of it, I mean, I really love the fact that she spends this time outside of her cast, willing to do more gaming stuff with me, because I know it's very easy to let this stuff kind of run away and to miss out on some of the other important parts of life. I did get a chance to see her in Ottawa. She visited for Canada Day, which was a lot of fun to be able to see her. And more importantly, on top of all of these nice things about her personally, I can say that she's a fantastic caster. I am a subscriber of hers, not on her channel, but on her Patreon. And she loves to do Shadowrun with me again. Oh, Saints Row. No, my bad. And hopefully we can get some Grand Theft Auto missions that will be fun to watch, rather than carry the frustration. I have a feeling with Johnny we should be able to make that work. But yeah, I am a member of her Patreon, and I got my first Perler creation. It was a lovely Canada flag that she gave me. And then on top of that, she does a wonderful cast. Everything that I do here at Truth and Requiem would be on PC. And on top of all of that, she's a wonderful caster. Whether you watch her on the creative channel with her perler beads and her various arts and crafts that she does for her followers. She does baking streams, or cooking streams, rather. That's not always baking. And then she plays games, and she does story-based games particularly well, in my view. Yeah, she does it all, and she's a very dear friend of mine. So at some point, maybe if I stop talking about her, she will shout herself out on Inside the Cast. But I think most of you know her. Excellent, there we go. I think most of you know her, and if you don't, I really do encourage you guys to check her out. King James II ordered the building of this Anglican church in the 1680s because he was a king, and a perk of the job is doing whatever you want. However, since Boston was full of Puritans who came to the New World precisely to get away from Anglicans, nobody was willing to sell land to the budding parish. In the end, the governor ordered that the church be built on top of the old public burial ground, the logic being that the dead couldn't complain, they're notoriously compliant, and there the church stands today. After the Revolution, the church was known as the Stone Chapel for several years. Kings not being particularly popular at the time, and calling the Stone Chapel was the best idea that anybody could come up with at the time. I've never understood these people's need for independence, by the way. We gave birth to them, they were happy to suckle on our teats in their infancy, there were a few toddler wobbles, but as soon as they got to their teenage years, all they could do was bang on about was their independence. So they stormed out, but we know they'll be back eventually to borrow money or to get us to wash their clothes, and we'll forgive them because we are older and wiser. This building hosted some of the key events in the American Revolution. The Old South Meeting House, most of it by accident. It just happens to be one of the largest buildings in Boston, so that when the meetings at Faneuil Hall overflowed, everyone moved to the Old South Meeting House to continue. This meant the biggest, angriest, most rebellious crowds ended up here. After the Boston Massacre, the people met here to demand that the governor remove British troops from the city, which he did. Thousands showed up here for meetings leading to the Boston Tea Party. On the night of the Tea Party itself, this is where Samuel Adams delivered the line, "This meeting can do nothing more to save the country," giving the go-ahead to seize the boats and dump the tea. Is anything a bigger slap in the face to a Brit than dumping tea? No. Well, apart from just slapping us in the face, but that's a secret I wish I hadn't told you. Of course, during the British siege of 1776, the church met the same fate as other rebel hotspots. It was ransacked. The pews in the pulpit were torn down and used as firewood, and the interior was filled with dirt and used as a stable and riding school. There was even a bar on the second level. I guess the troops thought that it would really stick it to the Puritans. The only thing worse would have been a karaoke night. Puritans hate karaoke. I am not going to TwitchCon Truth and Requiem. Beacon Hill. Perhaps predictably, Beacon Hill gets its name because the Puritan settlers placed a beacon on the hilltop. Beacon here essentially meant a bucket full of pitch hanging from a pole. The idea being that it could be lit to warn the countryside if the town was attacked. Simple, effective, and never actually used. The hill is shorter today than it used to be. The top of it was carted off to fill Mill Pond. This had the advantage of making the hilltop easier to build on, creating more land at Mill Pond, 2-for-1 deal for the developers. Beacon Hill became the place to live in Boston after the new Massachusetts State House opened here in 1790. Developers created upscale housing on the south side of the hill, which overlooks the Boston Common. The north side of the hill had been settled earlier and was much more less posh, sometimes going by the evocative nickname of Mount Whoredom. What a magical address. George Washington, ever the politician, would refer to it in one of his letters as Mount Horam, though that sounds more like an instruction than a place. Preferably east. I don't know. If you were to go to something like PAX, is it PAX? I guess they call it PAX West now. But the original one, the one in Seattle. I mean, that would be a nice opportunity to see, to see the West Coast again. But no, I mean, I would really like to go to a con at some point. I think it would be a nice experience to have. But I really do feel it would be better for me to go as some kind of a presenter or an exhibitor. I don't think so. I don't have a, again, this is not to take you guys for granted, but I would say that I don't have a fandom which is requiring me to see my public or something like that, right? It would be there to meet up with some friends, but, you know, I can meet up with friends at things more than cons. It would just sort of be nice if I was going to go and like make the effort to go out to a con, that I was doing something other than just, you know, meeting friends. Because like, to me, it seems like waiting in a bunch of lines with my friends is less exciting than, you know, any other number of things I could do with them. But I also think that's kind of the attitude that only somebody who hasn't been to a con can have, right? I'm sure if when I wind up at one, I'll have the time of my life, and I'll wonder why I avoided it. Then, of course, there's this nice business about the fact that as long as I don't go to cons, all of you won't know what I look like. Oh, I was too, Truth and Requiem. It was really great because, she came up to me, made eye contact, and, I was kind of nervous, but she knew exactly what to say. She just looked at me and said, oh, now I know why you don't use a camera. Then I didn't feel nervous anymore. I knew I didn't have a chance. It was great. Now Twitch is saying I'm offline. If I'm offline, I'm going to be very upset. So that's a shorter version of a story that I told. I think it was actually on her stream the first time I told that. That absolutely did not happen. But what was really funny was I said that to her on her cast. Somebody in her chat, I don't even remember who, called her a bitch. It was really wonderful to meet Jess for the first time. I got to see her in Vancouver. She was working in sort of influencer relations at the time. No, Truth and Requiem. I got to meet her in Vancouver for the first time. I did see her on the weekend. She stopped by for Canada Day. But no, the first time I met her was at a Vancouver Twitch meetup, and it was a lot of fun to run into her. Because I mean, we'd gotten to know each other sort of offline through chatting. Like we'd talked on Twitch. Obviously, I modded for her and such, and of course that gave me some opportunities to talk with her. Off cast in terms of just doing a voice chat on Discord or something like that, and we have, I mean, obviously a lot in common. Like, while she might have an interest and a passion in psychology, there's just something about sort of an academic temperament or an ability to understand ideas that, even though there might be a difference in terms of specialization, you can have a respect for somebody who can put a thought together and hold their own in a conversation, and just generally. You only need to look at her cast to know that she's a really likable person. And it was just so nice that, you can obviously meet, you can know somebody on a cast. No, I don't want to fast travel. You can obviously meet someone. You can meet someone online. You can sort of interact with them in that way. Nice. All right. Giddy up. Yeehaw! Ooh. Sorry, horse. Suckers. Oh, well, so much for that trap. I'm trying to find out how to switch my weapons. Well, screw you, horse. Excellent. All right, let's not run into the patrol. Who found who first? I think we kind of knew each. So, I mean, the funny thing was is that I'd seen much more of Jess than she'd seen of me at the time. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, so it was nice to meet Jess because she was very much like, so there's that idea of like what you see on a cast is normally, all right, I really want to find out how to switch my, so Q is firing, R. All right. As much as I like the hidden blade, the sword is a little classier. So yeah, like, obviously everything that you see on a cast is some kind of a character. It doesn't necessarily mean they're a fake person, or it doesn't mean that they are, insincere, but there's just there's a certain way of presenting yourself, which is just a very natural thing to do in a broadcast. But I think the thing that was so interesting about meeting Jess was that she was as nice and just as genuine of a person as she is on cast. Oh yeah, I should probably read the rest of these Animus entries. But yeah, so that was really nice. And yeah, I mean, the other thing about being, so I mean, obviously I was a bit nervous, I suppose, to initially meet, just because, you never really know what somebody's gonna be like. But I kind of got over, I guess I got over any sort of worries about that, just because I sort of knew, I knew what the deal was, right? Like, this might be unique to me, so I don't mean to generalize this to everyone, but like, when you meet somebody, even if it's a stranger, they are still a person, right? The only time I would feel nervous is if I have some kind of ulterior motive or something like that. So, I mean, what was my intention in seeing Jess? Well, to see somebody I considered a friend who I'd only seen online, who was coming into town for a Twitch meetup. And I got exactly that. I got to meet somebody who I got along as well with in person as I did online. I got to actually run into her with Alex the Rambler, who I'd originally met in the EXP bar. Got to take Jess to EXP, which is really nice. That was kind of the first place we hung out at, actually. Yeah, it was a really great time. And I kind of consider myself lucky that she's been able to make it up to Canada a couple times since. So. Well, like I said, Truth and Requiem. I'm not trying to generalize with people, but like this is the important thing, right? Is that like for me, I tend to, this is just me. Like I tend to think, why am I feeling this particular way? And so for me, because I know my intentions on things, like I can say, it's like, okay, well, when do I normally feel nervous? Well, if I'm trying to deceive someone, or if I'm trying to, to have some ulterior motive, right? Like, if I'm going to go and meet a professor to try and get a grade changed or something like that, because I knew I didn't work that hard, in that case, I'm not really, it's like, if I'm thinking, oh, can I get this story that keeps straight? That's when I tend to get nervous. And I'm like, well, I know that's not why I'm behaving this way. And so once I do an exercise like that, I don't feel particularly nervous. Again, it's just a person that I'm meeting, and it's a person who I know reasonably well. But everybody's different, right? I'm not sure many people reflect that way, so. Oh, that'd be really cool, Truth and Requiem. Boston Common. This was the harbor of being, this has the honor of being the first public park in North America. It started off as a pasture for William Blackstone, or Blackston if you prefer the original spelling, who despite his name was the first white settler in the area. When Boston started growing, Blackstone decided to move somewhere more remote. He sold the land to the growing city for £30, and they turned it into common land, hence the name. For the first century or two of Boston's history, this was the place to pasture cows, no more than 70 at a time. Drill soldiers, the British regulars, camped here and attend the occasional public hanging for offenses such as being a witch or being a Quaker, or perhaps simply take a nice walk near all the cows and the hanging. The British left camp when they fled the city in 1776. Public hangings ended in 1817. The cows were banned in 1830. You can still take a walk here, however. What's the point without the cows? Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, Truth and Requiem, it's everybody's different in their own case. So I can obviously only speak to myself, and in the end, I just think everybody comes to things from their own perspective and their own angle. How you doing, Nubasaur? It's great to see you again. Printing press, spiritual shop. Printing presses were originally brought to America to print religious texts, but by the time of the Revolutionary War, they were also used for things like newspapers, pamphlets, and broadsheets. Think of it as a colonial internet, about the same speed as dial-up. Unlike word of mouth, newspaper articles could spread news of events from colony to colony quickly and without any loss of information. But that doesn't mean it was unbiased. Far from it. Presses were commonly used to print propaganda. Every newspaper had its slant. Thank goodness that doesn't happen nowadays. Anyway, part of what made the Boston Massacre was such a turning point was the reprints of Paul Revere's Woodcut. It showed organized British soldiers in full formation firing point blank into an innocent crowd. A shocking image which enraged the people and fueled their hatred of the British. Completely made up, of course, but what did that matter? The public is there to be manipulated. Actually, I'd bet that you could use these places to print some propaganda of your own. If the soldiers are getting too unfriendly, a little reminder that you're here, the people might help. Jess, you don't have issues. She's literally perfect in every possible way. If you don't put her on a pedestal, you're a bad person. Did I say you were frustrating but cute? Oh yeah. Oops. Oh, come on, you big baby. I must have said that to her before she made a sick play in Ticket to Ride. Oh, have you played Assassin's Creed 3, Jess? What the hell is this thing? Oh, not too far. I mean, I'd definitely take the horse over walking, but... I'm not entirely sure colonials leapt over fences like this.
Have you found her? She's made camp not too far from
Was it the second half or the first
Excellent.
half, Jesse Quill?
Well, the sooner we're done, the sooner we can get out of this cold.
We'll move faster on horseback.
Thanks, game.
Sir, I am afraid I have some bad news, sir.
Oh?
Braddock is insisting I return to service under him. I've tried to beg off, to no avail.
No doubt he's still angry about losing Pitcairn. To say nothing of the shaming we gave him. Do as he asks. In the meantime, I'll work on having you released.
I'm sorry for the trouble.
Not your fault.
What is this guy, Canadian?
We're too late.
Fire's only just been snuffed. Snow recently disturbed. She's close.
Bollocks.
Tracks are fresh. It must be hers. Seems she took to higher ground. Out of the snow and into the trees.
Alright. So can we just say that this guy is like a super neckbeard? He's like one of these guys who stalks on like Facebook. Sees you working at like a Hot Topic or something like that. And then he's all like, oh yeah, we made a connection. You're like so nice to me in the store. And then she's all like, wait, how did you get this? And he's like, I totally didn't just stalk you.
Where?
As soon as she comes by, we're gonna jump out and confess our love. There goes the sound. I have no idea where I'm supposed to be going. Did the game just get a lot quieter for you guys as well? Yeah, I think the game is a lot quieter. Okay. I might just simply reset. Oh wait, I can't reset out because the I think the mission will reset. Making the word neckbeard. Wait, am I the first? Am I introducing the term neckbeard to everyone right now? I thought this was common knowledge. And hello, Melvira. Sorry about the muffled sound. We'll switch out of the game really quick to get that back.
Wait here.
You idiot.
Wait, come back.
Milady, I'm not with him.
You return to Braddock, Charles, before he grows suspicious. I can handle things from here.
But sir, but nothing. Go. Stop running. I only wish to talk. I am not your enemy.
Tricorns are the original fedoras.
Please just hear me out.
I'm a nice guy. You'll just give me a chance.
Enough with these games.
Do. All right, I don't get that at all. I guess I'm supposed to hit E and then left. Nubasaur, thank you very much for that subscription. I need to get a new animation and a sound for that pronto. Oh, god damn it. Yeah, guys, there's no benefit whatsoever to subbing to the stream right now. You're doing it purely because you want to give me sweet, sweet money. Malvarus, I think it was mostly just because... So, in this case, I think the idea was it came to be associated with a certain type of, like, nice guyish behavior. I genuinely do not know why... Alright, I'm just gonna let this thing kill me. I apparently suck at QuickTime events. I'm not entirely sure. I think it just happened to be that there's just a general... I mean, like, it's the worst possible thing you can do, right? It's like you're judging somebody purely based on their appearance. But in this case, it just happens to be there's a certain, you know, certain look that that tends to come up pretty commonly with these guys. But clearly, then you got to worry more about the neckbeard within. I am so bad at this. This is 2010 on Urban Dictionary. Wow. All right. Oh, wow. I don't need to be fast on that at all. So it turns out on the Wolf Hunter minigame, if you rush, you make a mistake, and then you don't do it. But you have like hours to take care of that. Where are you, my lady? This is the sort of thing I think Eagle Sense should be able to find. Broads in the snow. By the way, for more Fedora, I strongly recommend viewing the L.A. Noire or the La Noire playthrough. Oh, there she is. I found the mysterious woman.
You try my patience, woman.
Oh come on. Flying tackle. Oh, maybe not.
Me, Haytham. I come in peace.
Have a good night, Truth of Requiem.
You speaking so slow.
Sorry.
What do you want?
Well, your name, for one.
I'm Gadzit Zio.
Pleased to meet you. Godsday.
Just call me Zio.
Dio.
Zio.
Dio.
Now tell me why it is you're here. Where did you get this?
From an old friend.
I've only seen such markings in one other place.
Where?
Well, it is forbidden for me to speak of it.
I saved your people. Does this mean nothing to you?
What do you mean, you people?
Look, I am not the enemy.
You're a nice guy.
Close to here there is a hill. Meet me there, and we'll see if you speak the truth.
Oh, we are so in, guys.
That town hosts soldiers who seek to drive my people from these lands. They're led by a man known as the Bulldog.
Edward Braddock.
You know him?
He is no friend of mine.
Every day, more of my people are lost to men like him.
Then I suggest we put a stop to it. Together.
I am gonna get so many friendship tokens for, like, killing the redcoats.
But first, we have to find him.
Jess, could you please explain friendship tokens for the cast? And more importantly, could you please explain how to redeem them?
I know
Yet you remain.
that I might prove you wrong.
It will not happen.
So you say.
So I know.
Yet, I remain.
All right. Database time. Oh my god. Kanitkeo was a member of the Kanitkea Nation. I really wish they would give you pronunciation help here. Living on the frontier lands near Boston at the time of the French and Indian War. Assassin records indicate she was the daughter of Ikoyanir, or clan mother, from an early age and was being groomed for leadership herself. While many in her community chose to ignore the incursions by the colonists in the area, the growing tensions between the French and the British, Kanitkeo was convinced that they presented a very real danger. Or maybe it's Kanitzero? Anyways. She began to argue to anyone that would listen, that the village should take action rather than staying silent, which was contrary to the will of the clan chiefs at the time. She refused to follow orders to remain neutral, deciding to fight back in her own way and recruiting help where she could get it, including from Haytham Kenway. I feel like there were more entries that I didn't do. I was correct. The old belfry. Originally, Lexington's meetings hall didn't have a steeple for a bell, so a separate belfry was built to summon the people to church. Church services, funerals, fires, and of course the British soldiers trooping into the town to raid Patriot weapons caches. The belfry originally stood on a hill near the town, but was moved to this location in 1768, possibly because nobody found it fun to climb a big hill just to ring a bell. Not unless they were a bit simple. Friendship tokens used to be a cute little thing, like an object that would symbolize a friendship between platonic friends. Concord. This was the regulars' destination when they set out from Boston on the day of the battles of Lexington and Concord. Inside the town, the British found cannon, flour, salt, food, and musket balls. They broke the cannon and threw the rest into the local mill pond. A bad idea, since the local residents retrieved most of it later undamaged. In their zeal, the regulars also accidentally set fire to a local meeting house. It happens. And then joined the bucket brigade to help put it out. However, the local militia saw the smoke and thought the regulars had set fire to the whole town. The militia marched in, causing a battle with the regulars at the North Bridge just outside of town. It was a comedy of errors with very little comedy. The battle at the North Bridge is immortalized in the Concord Hymn, a popular poet by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Emerson lived in Concord in the 1830s, which probably made him a bit biased. He refers to the fighting on the bridge as the shot heard round the world, a bit of an overstatement since the first shots of the war had already been fired at Lexington hours before. Maybe he'd been napping. You know what poets are like. Jesse, well, nowadays nice guys, girls think that doing normal things like treating another human with basic respect and dignity means that they can accumulate these tokens in order to redeem them for a relationship. But it's not a relationship that they want, just as human spudge for emotional issues and a... Oh my, I didn't know you used words like that, Jessica. And for some reason, these people think that when others are nice to them, like a decent person does to another person, it means they're being led on and that this person owes them more. Jess, you talking about somebody in particular here? I thought we had this can we have this conversation off cast? This is kind of embarrassing for me right now. Pet the dog. Pet the dog. Pet the dog. Pet the dog. Trading posts. Trading posts were essentially general stores set up in the North American frontier. The clientele, mainly explorers and members of local indigenous nations, would barter for various goods such as guns, axes, pots, and pans. Payment was mostly in the form of furs, which were shipped back to Europe. The fur trade at the time was extremely lucrative, and one of the reasons that explorers were continually moving into the frontier. They were hoping to find more and better sources of pelts. There was a reason why Davy Crockett only ever seemed to have one hat. Many of the trading posts were privately owned, but they were used to push political agendas as well. For example, after the Revolutionary War ended, the British government used their trading posts to encourage indigenous people not to sign treaties with the United States. The United States government took over the colonial fur trade in the colonies in 1796, establishing something called the factory system. The idea was to regulate prices in order to stop exploitation of indigenous peoples by private traders. Unfortunately, under the new system, indigenous leaders were forced to trade large amount of land to get access to trading posts. Private exploitation had become government exploitation. Lucky that's the only time in history that's ever happened. Since that obviously wasn't any better, the factory system was abolished in 1822. I like doing this, Jess. It's one of the things, I believe this is a very conscious decision, and I think it's one of the reasons why the device of the Animus exists. But the game definitely plays with history. But I do like the fact that they do include the databases and give you a feeling of place.
Mohawkman is likely to raise suspicions, if not muskets.
This is hardly the first time I've been amongst your people. I can handle myself.
What do you mean, you people?
I hope so.
Can't stand being quartered there. The endless crashing of the waves, the sting of the salt in my eyes, and the goddamn gulls shrieking and shitting everywhere.
You're sure that's where we're going?
Aye, the Bulldog's putting together another expedition.
That's what they're calling them now. Expeditions.
Aye, smart too. Slap a fancy name on something and all evil is excused.
I am very good at eavesdropping, chat. Why are you guys so suspicious? Come on.
Tell the French you're ready to move in our positions. Wonder what Braddock intends to do about it.
He's already left for the advance camp. I'll wager our little holiday here is just about ended. We'll be marching south before week's end.
Oi! Where you going, Cully?
Me?
No, the other cock Robin.
Well, I was leaving.
Oh? And now?
Well, now, I'm going to feed you your teeth.
What a badass.
And you were worried I was going to be the problem?
You know, I was originally a little apprehensive about the countering system, but it feels very natural once you get used to the controls. I'm still messing up a little bit here, but especially in the context of a fight. God, I love these moments. But yeah, in the context of like a group fight, this is pretty satisfying stuff. It's very important that I smash every table in the area. Elsie, how are you doing? It's great to see you again.
It's nothing.
Here.
Oh, I thought she was going to smack me over the head with that. Sorry, guys. This is a bit of an extended mission. I will jump out of the game and back in to get the audio back as soon as I can.
We should move on. Meet me at Braddock's camp when you're ready.
Excellent. 2 friendship tokens acquired. All right, we will do the Animus entries when we get back. Watch Dogs 2, No Compromise. Buy now. All right, let me just take a quick look and see what the system... Yep. Seems in order. By the way, guys, thank you very much for the auto host again. I'm getting used to the new Twitch system, which doesn't tell me when anything but the manual hosts happen. But it is 100% appreciated every time that happens. It's fine, you're going to start reading everything I suggested, but then you notice you've got 900 pages of Conan Doyle's book in English, so you couldn't hold yourself, and now you're trying to read it. I really like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Are you reading the Sherlock Holmes stories, or are you reading The Lost World? Sherlock Holmes are some of my favorite stories. All right. Speaking of reading. Excellent. I'm trying to remember some of my favorite. I remember the Adventure of the Dancing Men is a neat one because it has ciphers in it, like code making and code breaking. What else? I know the Hound of the Baskervilles is a really popular one, but I seem to remember enjoying the Speckled Band for some reason. You know, they're all good. Pretty sure you auto-host you, but as you have 0 followers, it's more of a gesture of confidence than anything else. Well, I appreciate it, Nubasaur. I mean, everything helps, and you never know... Oh, I should make some kind of a challenge where I have to pet every animal. Here, kitty. Here, kitty. Lid. Oh, this is a secret French hideout. I know it. What was I gonna say? Yeah, like you never know where you're gonna find your next viewer, right? Like it's not like I turn around and say it's like, oh, you've only got two followers. Like, why would I even bother, right? Like, if somebody, if somehow somebody clicks on a name and sees me here, that's an opportunity for them to decide whether or not they like my stuff, and it's really great. You've read almost everything you found about Sherlock Holmes in your city when you were 7 years old. Still remember a lot of the plots. I've always, at least for me, I've always enjoyed the mysteries. Like, one of the reasons why I like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is I still find the stories engaging even when I know the solutions. It's actually one of the reasons why I really like the BBC Sherlock Holmes. Now, admittedly, I've only seen 2 seasons of it, so I don't know if the newer ones are any good. But I really like the way that they could modernize the stories. They still made them accessible and interesting. But like, if you'd read the books, you sort of knew what the references were. I don't know. That kind of stuff tends to appeal to me. So. But yeah, it is worth mentioning. Like, one of the nice things about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle too was he was a very he's a good writer, and not just a mystery writer. So it wasn't just Sherlock Holmes. The other stuff that he wrote is definitely worth checking out too. More familiar with the USSR version of Sherlock Holmes? I've heard that it is one of the most faithful adaptations. Which is really interesting. It's kind of like Akira Kurosawa, a Japanese filmmaker, making some of the best Shakespeare adaptations in cinema as samurai movies. Sometimes, people just find an angle. Sometimes it requires a different perspective. I don't remember the actor's name though.
To mask your approach. Having second thoughts?
No, my first thought is this a date? Is this a date, my lady? Is this a date?
Go on then. I'll keep watch from here.
So this isn't a date.
I can hide in that cart.
What cart? Again, we'll read the Animus entries when the mission's done here. Oh, that card. Woo! Oh, ah.
What's in the wagon? I need a full inventory.
As you wish. Let's see. 2 barrels of salt, 12 pounds pork, 10 pounds beef, 7 dozen eggs, 16 wheels of cheese. None of it French, don't worry. 5 bottles of whiskey, a couple dozen new uniforms, boots, and leather for patching, blankets, a cart feed for the horses. What else? That's it. That's all there is.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
Those cannons are like to cause trouble. Perhaps I could sabotage them.
Sabotage. Okay.
General Braddock refused the offer. There will be no truce.
Well. Oh, no worries at all, Elsie. If I'm not on, it's still great to see you again.
Perhaps I could sabotage them.
And like I said, I never take attendance here, so it's always good to see a familiar face. I hope you have a good evening if I don't get a chance. Sometimes you have to work at your job. I'm very glad that you have a job that lets you catch Twitch, however long or short it may be.
Why, George?
What?
Reason did he give?
Why, game? Why? Alright, I'm just going to stay in those trees. One thing that I think is a massive improvement for this game is that if you fail the mission, you can try and get the
Perhaps I could sabotage them.
you can get the sync events.
General Braddock refused the offer. There will be no truce.
Damn it! Why, George? What reason did he give?
He said a diplomatic solution was no solution at all. That allowing the French to retreat would only delay an inevitable conflict. One in which they'd now have the upper hand.
There's merit to those words, as much as I hate to admit it. Still, it's unwise.
It doesn't fit well with me. We're far from home with our forces divided. Worse, I fear Braddock's bloodlust makes them careless. It puts the men at risk. I'd rather not be delivering grim news to mothers and widows because the Bulldog wanted to prove a point.
Where is the general now?
Rallying the troops.
And then it's on to Fort Duquesne, I assume?
Eventually.
We know what happened in Fort Duquesne.
Take time. There's a copy of the plans in the command tent should you wish to review them. At least this will be ended soon. I tried, John.
I know, my friend. I know.
That map will surely be of use. I need...
Hey, where are you off to? Get back here!
Well, never mind. Killing. Oh, nope. Haven't killed a guard yet.
Stop! Come back, you wicked coward!
Oh, I'm so screwed. Drop, you fool.
Lads, over here! Stop him dead!
It's not exactly how I planned on this mission going, but so far so good. Sabotage.
Let's have a word.
Nope, no words. You're killing me, Kenway.
Trouble here, lads! Hurry! Now you die!
Thanks, subs. I have no idea what I'm doing in here. Alright, let's see if we can give this guy the slip. Nope, we cannot. Get out of there, you fool.
So slow! So futile! You can't say that!
Dude!
So slow! So slow!
That is possibly the clowniest escape I've made, but you know what? It worked. So, at this point, I want to get out of here so I can read the Animus on George Washington and also talk about Fort Duquesne.
What news?
Braddock has left to rally his troops. They're marching on Fort Duquesne. It'll be a while yet till they're ready, which gives us time to form a plan.
No need. We will ambush him here near the river. Go and gather your allies. I will do the same. I will send word when it is time to strike.
It's nice to know in Assassin's Creed 3 you can do a clowny mission and still be able to get full sync. Battle for Fort Necessity. This was one of the opening battles of the French and Indian War, and it's important that opening battles are quite exciting. Otherwise, everyone just sort of loses interest. In 1754, George Washington was sent to the head of the Ohio River Valley with a group of Virginia militia. The land there was contested territory between the British colonists and the French. Washington's mission was to retake Fort Duquesne and drive French forces out of the area. Washington and his troops attacked a French patrol at Jumonville Glen in what would be the first acts of violence in the war. Washington expected a return attack and so had his troops build a palisade wall surrounding their supplies, a fort of necessity, hence the name. But as they might as well have called it the Fort of Inadequacy, because supplies ran low and the militia and their British regular enforcement were quickly overwhelmed. On July 4th, Washington surrendered, was allowed to retreat, and someone else was put in charge of naming forts. It was Washington's only military surrender, though he had plenty of strategic retreats. PR spin was alive and well even back then. Yeah, I've not played this before subs, so... and I don't know a ton of American history. I know a bit. We talked a little bit about the indirect influence that Canada has on U.S. history in ways that I don't think people, the way I don't think people always recognize. But in this case here, we've just been appreciating the first couple of sequences. John Fraser, also spelled Fraser or Frazier, was a Scottish-born trader living in the area of Fort Duquesne during the French and Indian War and a participant in the Braddock expedition. Fraser left Scotland sometime after 1745, possibly because of political trouble. The Frasers had supported the Stuarts, who were on the losing end of the rebellion. He set up trade on the upper Allegheny River, but was quickly run out of his cabin by the French. He moved further down the river, near modern-day Pittsburgh, built a new cabin, and continued to trade. Fraser was one of the settlers building a fort on the site of Fort Duquesne, near his own land, when the French took over again. Fraser supplied Washington's attempt to reclaim the fort in 1754, which was followed by the defeat at Fort Necessity, and served as a chief scout during the Braddock expedition. After Braddock failed, Fraser gave up the area, depriving the French of a third opportunity to chase him off his land, so I suppose it's a small victory. He moved to the Tuscarora Valley before finally settling at Fort Bedford. Oh, interesting. Yeah, subs. I mean, I do feel a couple things about the opening didn't quite work for me, but it's an interesting period in history, and we're really early in the story, so I don't have a lot. I mean, there's so many interesting historical personages in the time period here, so I have a feeling that there's a lot of opportunity for this story, and I'm absolutely not going to make any judgments on it until I'm well into it and we've established the full cast of characters. And more importantly, I mean, Johnny really likes this game, Johnny Big Time, so he has a pretty solid instinct for games. So I have high hopes. George Washington. Here's a name even you should recognize. George Washington, who will go on to be the leader of the army during the American Revolution and the first president of the United States. Spoiler alert. I was going to say you probably know everything I'm going to tell you, but that would be a lie. What you know is that George Washington has a lot of things named after him, and anything else you learned in school you forgot because you thought you'd never use it in real life. You should call your history teacher and tell her she was right all along. George Washington was the son of a planter from Virginia. He was raised with little education, but was ambitious, teaching himself mostly from books. Little Nate the Great. Thank you very much for the follow. I really appreciate that. I don't know if this is deliberately washing or if it's just a shortage of Washington. Washington started in business early, speculating on land starting at the age of 18. When he was 20, his older brother died, leaving him the heir of the family plantation at Mount Vernon, where he lived until his death, and where you can still visit his grave today. Washington got his first military start during the French and Indian War, leading an expedition to Fort Duquesne in 1754, a destination he never reached, having surrendered at Fort Necessity. The next year, Washington headed to Fort Duquesne again, this time as a guide for Edward Braddock, during the ill-fated Braddock expedition. Washington went as a volunteer, hoping that working for Braddock would get him on a track to a military promotion. Though the battle was a rout, Washington earned credit for organizing the retreat, and later that year he was made a colonel in charge of the Virginia militia. Washington completely revamped the militia, with hopes that under his organization and training they would be accepted into the British military. They never were. Washington resigned his post in 1758. I wouldn't say the snub led to his contempt for the British, but snubs rarely help. By the late 1760s, Washington had become active in political life, taking a role in the Virginia House of the Burgesses. He went on to be a member of the Continental Congress, and when war broke out in 1775, he was the Congress's choice to lead the army. Fun fact, apparently he showed up dressed as a general. I don't know if this is the origin of the phrase, dress for the job you want. It's Sean poking at Desmond, but I suppose it's a bit of a jab towards some gamers who may not like these things interesting without gaming. I absolutely think it's that as well, Jess. I mean, it is written from the perspective of Sean, and as is evident from some of the terrible jokes inside of it. But there's enough sly double meanings that can definitely apply to a gaming audience. At the time, Washington said, "I do not think myself equal to the command I am honored with," which I'm sure inspired complete confidence in everyone who heard it. Imagine if you were on an airplane and the captain opened with that. It's possible that Washington was being falsely modest, but the fact is this: he wasn't a military genius, and he knew it, though I'm sure it hurts your American pride to hear me say that he wasn't perfect. Washington had several narrow misses where the army could have easily been obliterated, at Manhattan and again at Brandywine, among others. Washington won an early victory. He broke at the siege of Boston, but then he made the disastrous move of fortifying New York, a city he couldn't defend without a navy that he didn't have. Even you can work that one out. He spent the latter half of 1776 retreating across New York and New Jersey, losing battle after battle until Christmas, when he pulled off a successful surprise attack against the Hessian troops at Trenton. And while that battle makes for some famous paintings, it did rally the flagging confidence of the public. It was a minor victory in the war. All right. This might be the last mission of the night, guys. I am starting to feel the hour a bit, and I do need to... I've got a lot of stuff that I need to do in the next 2 days of work, and I'm not 100% confident that I'm going to be able to get it done in time. But I know getting a good night's sleep and being to work on time, excuse me, will definitely be more helpful than a late night, so. I'm trying not to get soaking wet, but
I would never want to belong to any club.
Addictions 1233, thank you very much for following. And as I like to say, there may have been 1,232 others, but you will always remain the most precious one to me. Thank you very much for the follows, guys. It's funny. I obviously took a break for all right, after all that effort trying not to get wet. I took a bit of a break for the Canada Day weekend, obviously, and we took a big drop in follow numbers. So the last 2 days of doing Assassin's Creed 3, you guys have been really generous with your follows and your subs, as it turns out. Really sorry I didn't have alerts for that, but I wasn't expecting that. So now I have my work cut out for me. But yeah, the support has been tremendous, both in terms of just, you know, I think the follow is still one of those things that gives me a little bit of a charge as a caster. There is definitely something to be said for somebody, you know, it might feel like a very minor thing, and obviously it's a very low cost action to do to follow a channel. But like it means a lot, at least to me, like to know effectively that somebody has said is like, look, I like your stuff enough that I want to know when it comes up again. That means a lot. And I think any streamer who is worthy of your time feels the same. Just because they are a larger one, and maybe they don't necessarily have the capacity to be able to thank each individual follower. I'm pretty sure the people who are really worth it, and the people who do this out of a love for either the hobby or the love of entertainment, definitely appreciate every single person who likes their stuff enough to hit that follow button. So thank you very much, guys. Get the button, the subs will come. I've noticed. Thank you very much for that, Nubisaur. But we'll get it sorted. I am a little curious to know what you guys would like along the lines of things like sub emotes. It's not something... I'm not going to give any kind of a deadline for that. I think it would be better for me to come up with something that I think is good rather than trying to force it. But yeah, if there's something that you guys would like, I'll entertain. I'll definitely entertain it.
The cold, cold ground. Here, here.
Hard at work, I see.
Milady?
How did you...
It is time. We've set up camp to the north. Meet me there.
Gentlemen, let us away.
Oh yeah, I can see pixel art David Ricardo.
First it was too cold. Now it's too goddamn hot.
You're always complaining, Lee.
And humid too. It's an ice swamp, I tell you.
Wham! Okay.
To say nothing of the mosquitoes.
Warm weather and bugs are soon to be the least of our worries.
What? You mean the bulldog? Huh, please. We'll be in that one's beef soon enough and on to the next.
Oh, Tom Sargent would be a good
Where's
one.
your boy Lee gone off to?
Returned to finish out his service under Braddock.
I imagine the bulldog's none too pleased after the stunt we pulled.
Pleased to spin
Could
a
let you
tale
guys
of
see
my
some
kindness
more
and beg
scenery.
forgiveness. He is away with words, especially when it comes to flattery. I expect he'll be welcomed back with open arms.
Which would give us a man inside.
Precisely.
Unless you've underestimated our enemy.
Milady?
I see you've been busy.
All these men are from many different tribes, united in their desire to see Braddock sent away. The Abenaki, the Lenape, the Shawnee.
And you? Who do you stand for?
Myself.
What would you have me do?
Will you help the others to prepare? Follow. They come.
Everything all right, sir?
Just savoring the moment. No doubt, many wonder why it is we've pushed so far west. These are wild lands, as yet untamed and unsettled. But it shall not always be so. In time, our holdings will no longer suffice. And that day is closer than you think. We must ensure our people have ample room to grow and further prosper. Which means we need more land.
Lebensraum. Have a good one,
The French
Nubisaur.
understand this and endeavor to prevent such growth. They skirt around our territory, erecting forts and forging alliances, awaiting the day they might strangle us with the noose they've built. This must not come to pass. We must sever the cord and send them back. This is why we ride. To offer them one last chance. The French will leave. Or they will die.
Good luck on the Oregon Trail, Nubisaur.
Wait. To scatter the expedition is not enough. Must ensure that Braddock falls, else he's sure to try again. Disguise myself as one of his own and make my way to his side. Your ambush will provide the perfect cover for me to deliver the killing blow.
And hopefully I will deliver it with one of those awesome musket.
We await your signal.
Kill militia without triggering open
There, in front of
conflict.
us.
Alright.
The wood's too thick. At this rate, it'll be days before we reach Duquesne. We should follow the river instead.
The truth would be exposed there.
Oop, boop, 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 boop. Get out of there!
Kill them!
I'm screwed. Wait, does this really count for not... Jesus Christ, please pick up the weapon. Alright, not exactly how I wanted to do that, but... What I didn't get was why I could hide in the bushes at one point but not the other. It might have been because of the sort of the red triggering, but...
With the French pushback, there'll be a lot of opportunities for this up north.
Sir, you are grateful to have served.
Edward. Not so fun on the other end of the barrel, is it?
Look out!
Sir.
Where are you off to, Edward?
Oh. Nicely done. I think we're just gonna fail out of this one and find out how the hell we blow those things up without without going into melee range. Yeah, so it seems like I can't shoot, shoot, shoot. Yeah, it takes way too long to trigger. It's a great technique, but you can't like do it. It seems like you can't do it. Ugh. It feels like you have to stand still, so it's not a really effective tactic. Thanks, game. Yeah, for whatever reason I can't make it gallop. I think I'll just give up trying to get the gunpowder. Well, you know what? Where we can get it to make sense, we'll try it, but I don't have a lot of hope for this thing. Oh, for God's sake. Unfortunately, we didn't blow ourselves up on that.
I never took you for a coward, Edward.
Come on, then! Such arrogance. I always knew it would be the end of you. Is the end of you.
Don't. Hurry before he gets away! I said go!
I don't deserve this!
Flying tackle. I didn't skip leg day, Braddock. You're fucked.
I'm sorry, Edward, but you forced my hand.
This is slightly comical. Imagine if this were like a top-down view. Two guys running in a swamp.
Why, Hatham?
Your death opens a door. It's nothing personal. Well, maybe it is a little personal. Been a pain in my ass, after all.
But we are brothers in arms.
Once, perhaps. No longer.
Do you think I've forgotten what you did? All those innocents slaughtered, and for what? It does not engender peace to cut your way to resolution.
Wrong. Whether we applied the sword more liberally and more often, the world would be a better place than it is today.
In this instance, I concur. Farewell, Edward.
I would never want to belong to any club that would have some...
Nefrian 100.
It's done.
Of the 99 other Nefrians, you are the dearest to me as well. Thank you very much for the follow.
I've upheld my part of the bargain. I expect that you will honor yours.
See?
Follow me.
Total nice guy. He's cashing in those friendship tokens for sure.
No. No.
It's a nice little parallel that they made for the cave drawings,
I thought that I held a key that would open something here.
contrasted to the
This room is all there is.
contrasted to the graffiti when you first arrived to it.
I expected more. What do they mean?
It tells the story of Yotzitzizu, who came into their world and shaped it for what life might come. She had a hard journey, fraught with great loss and peril. But she believed in her children and what they might achieve. And though she is long gone from the physical world, her eyes still watch over us. Her ears still hear our words. Her hands still guide us. And her love still gives us strength.
You've shown me great kindness, dear. Thank you. I should go.
A few days later. All right. Still in sequence 3? I might be able to... No, I did say that was the last mission. what I am going to do, Victoria Avega, 13. All the numbers here. Do I need to make this horrible joke again? Yes. See, EJ Flores, first of his name. Thank you, or her name. Thank you very much for the follow. I'm surprised. Thank you very much, guys. I do appreciate it. What I am going to do, unfortunately for all of you who are following, I am done for tonight. It's quite late for me. We do normally cast Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. I am going to see if I can do a little bit more for Assassin's Creed 3 because I have a specific time when I would like to finish this. I'm not going to force it. I'd like to get the full experience if I can. But I do have another Assassin's Creed thing planned. And for those of you who know your history, you know exactly when I need to have this done by. For those of you who don't know your history, don't look it up. But what we are going to close off the night with, I am going to read the remaining Animus sections. If nothing else, I'll probably play this game on Friday again. Possibility that I'll do it Thursday. If you want to be notified of the stream, hit the follow button. If you want to know exactly what I'm going to be playing, you can always check out the Twitter. It's also at System Chalk. But for now, I hope you guys stick with me because I'm going to be reading the Animus entries, and then we will host gentlemen who are possibly a milady, but I don't think any of them are casting at this hour. But I will definitely put you in the hands of someone who I think is worthy of your attention. So let's just take a quick second here and learn us some history. The Braddock Expedition, date July 9th, 1755. This battle was part of the French and Indian War. In it, Edward Braddock's Fourth of 1,500 British regulars and militia was decimated by a group of French-led troops half its size. This is not something that we talk about much in Britain. Braddock had been sent to capture Fort Duquesne on top of the Ohio River. His officers included a young George Washington, possibly because Washington knew the area, having surrendered at Fort Necessity the year before. Braddock's troops were about 10 miles from Fort Duquesne when they were ambushed by a group of French and indigenous fighters. Braddock's advanced troops were overwhelmed and fell back into the main body of the army. His rear guard didn't hear the order to stop and kept advancing into the main body of the army. The result was chaos. Almost every one of his officers was killed, with the exception of Washington. Braddock himself was fatally wounded. Washington had him carried from the field, and he died 4 days later. An interesting historical note, Braddock gave his officer's sash to George Washington, asking him to preserve it. Washington did, and it's still on display at Mount Vernon. The battle is known as Braddock's defeat, but interestingly, no one knows why. I'm kidding, though if you need me to tell you why, I don't think you're really cut out for this. Abenaki. The Abenaki nation originated in what's now northern New England and the southern Canadian Maritimes. Although suggesting there's only one nation can be a bit of a misnomer, since Abenaki can refer to numerous groups from around the same approximate geographic area and language family, Algonquin, since you ask. Although the various Abenaki would join together during crisis events, like when they were under attack from other nations, for the most part they had no central authority. That's probably partly what caused the encroachment of the British colonies on their land. The British like to have formal governments they could negotiate treaties with. It's just so much more civilized, and sometimes there are canapes. So from the colonist perspective, no central government meant that the Abenaki had no claim on the land. Of course, they could have found out otherwise, but that would have taken work, and it would have been complicated, and perhaps most importantly, the Abenaki might have said no. While the Abenaki tried to remain neutral during the French and Indian War, they were quite literally caught between the warring British and French colonies, so some conflict was inevitable. For the most part, they sided with the French, who were less responsible for driving them out of their homeland. The lesser of two evils, I suppose you could say, though that's a sentence I never thought I'd say about the French. Lenape. Also called the Lenni Lenape or the Delaware. Before European colonization, the Lenape lived mostly along the banks of the Delaware River in what's modern-day New Jersey and Pennsylvania. The Lenape were one of the first nations to come into contact with Europeans, most significantly with William Penn, who founded Pennsylvania, which was a stroke of luck given his name. While the Lenape relationship with Penn was mostly peaceful, when Penn died, his sons forced most of the Lenape off their land in a deal known as the Walking Purchase. During the French and Indian War, the Lenape sided primarily with the French, though some individual groups would later leave to join the British. In 1778, they were first to sign a land treaty with the Continental Congress, agreeing to provide scouts to the army in exchange for supplies. I imagine they simply liked fine cheeses and onions. The newly formed United States showed its gratitude by eventually moving the Lenape into isolated communities in Ohio and southern Canada. How wonderfully thoughtful. I am doing quite well, Chess Set 5. How are you? the Shawnee. At the time of the French and Indian War, the people of the Shawnee Nation were mostly living in and around the Ohio Valley, the territory surrounding Fort Duquesne. Traditionally, their hunting grounds had extended into Pennsylvania and Virginia, but they were being slowly moved by from their lands by the advancing line of British colonization. Hoping to stop, or at least slow settlement, some of the Shawnee entered the war, siding with their traditional trading partners, that is, the French. By 1758, some Shawnee negotiated peace with the British in the Treaty of Easton. However, the treaty wasn't respected, and if you know anything about colonial history, you're probably sadly unsurprised by that. Leading another war, Pontiac's Rebellion in 1763. By the time the American Revolution started, many of the Shawnee opted to remain neutral, although some sided with the British, again hoping for help pushing back colonists. Unfortunately, the result was the same as many other indigenous people. The Shawnee were forced to leave their lands, with the majority eventually settling in Oklahoma. Good Lord, settling in Oklahoma, as if their story couldn't get any worse. And finally, the updated entry on Edward Braddock. Edward Bulldog Braddock was a major general placed in charge of the British troops at the beginning of the French and Indian War, possibly because he had a nickname like Bulldog. Braddock was serving as the acting governor of Gibraltar when he received command in North America. He was given control of 2 regiments of regulars and assigned to win back Fort Duquesne from the French, known as the Braddock Expedition, as part of a larger attack on the French colonies on the continent. Braddock and his Braddock had been well liked as the governor of Gibraltar, but things changed once he reached North America. He had been known for keeping strict order amongst his troops, but it seems he went beyond that into brutality. He gained a reputation for being quick-tempered and cruel. He also displayed a contempt for non-British soldiers that alienated the colonial militia he was trying to recruit. So a cruel, racist bulldog, then. That's my least favorite type of bulldog. Braddock took a bullet to the chest in the Battle of 1755, rumor has it from one of his own soldiers, which is a job hazard when you're nasty to people around you and they all have guns. Sounds like the bulldog may have to be put down. It was George Washington who carried Braddock from the field on his sash, which Braddock then entrusted to Washington. That carrying bit might sound a bit odd, but that sash is bigger than it looks, more than 3 meters long, and doubled as a field hammock. It says something about officers that they'd wear a piece of clothing designed to carry their body off the battlefield, which would also sing a limo for getting shot at. The ways of war are mysterious. Braddock died of his injuries a few days later. Washington kept the sash. Here's something interesting. Because of concerns that enemy soldiers would desecrate Braddock's body, he was buried under the road so the wagons would run over the earth and hide the gravesite. In 1804, world workers rediscovered the remains and they were moved to another site, which is now marked by a marble monument. And that is Assassin's Creed 3 for us tonight, folks. So, for those of you who are interested in the history, so one thing I would encourage you, one thing that I get a lot out of, because I live in Ottawa, the capital of Canada, we've got a wonderful war museum. It's actually free on Thursday evenings. I might stop by there tomorrow. If I don't cast tomorrow, you'll know where I am. But they talk quite a bit about Indigenous involvement in wars, and both the War of 1812, defending from American invasion, as well as, effectively, the military history of Canada begins with the First Nations. So I get some of the things that they're talking about in the Animus entries are things that are recorded in the War Museum, which I quite like. For those of you who are specifically interested in an account of the American Revolution, I've been reading a really great book by Theodore Draper called A Struggle for Power, The American Revolution. What I will do, I quoted from it last cast where I was talking about how the sort of as a result of these conflicts, the fight over Fort Duquesne, the 7-Year War, and ultimately the British taking the French colonies in Canada, leading towards the American Revolution due to the lack of a power that was forming a threat on the 13 colonies. Again, that was basically from probably the opening 10 pages of the book. So the back of the book, here's the write-up, which hopefully will motivate some of you to check it out if you guys find this period of history interesting. From one of our most important historians comes a boldly argued reinterpretation of the most critical event in our nation's past. For Theodore Draper, the American Revolution was not a contest of ideologies, but a struggle for power, quote, between the power the British wished to exercise over the Americans and the power the Americans wish to exercise over themselves, end quote. Drawing on a wealth of contemporary documents as well as recent scholarship, Draper persuasively demonstrates that English politicians were beginning to worry about the colony's growing autonomy as early as 1760. At the same time, he shows that even the most radical Americans continued to see themselves as British subjects until virtually the last minute, as it vividly recreates such watersheds as the Stamp Act and the Boston Massacre from the perspectives as diverse as those of Benjamin Franklin and King George III. A struggle for power succeeds in transforming our understanding of our national origins. So, I mean, it's, well, thank you very much, Chess Set 5. It's the only one I've got, so I'm glad that it's pleasing for people. But yeah, this is, if you guys like this period of history and if you like the characters in this game, I strongly recommend this book. It is very readable. It is a popular book. Like, it's popular reading. It's obviously an American history work. It is somewhat weighty. It's about 500 pages long in this this paperback that I have. But right from the opening pages, I mean, the opening quotes that they have, sort of setting the table for this monumental event, you know, and to be able to see the revolution from the eyes of the people who experienced is pretty rare. And more importantly, it is an absolutely fascinating account of the dynamics behind it. It's maybe not the very sanitized and kind of tidy story that you tend to get sort of from a basic civics lesson. It's a really interesting account in terms of power and what. I mean, I'll put it to you this way. As somebody who plays a lot of strategy games, plays stuff like Europa Universalis, it resonated a lot more to me in terms of the ideas of balances of power and how a change in some other part of the world can potentially lead to some events that will allow you to advance your own interests. You hate this game, Dark Dead 26? I don't know what to say to that. I'm definitely going to be playing it for a while, but... Anyways, guys, that's it for me. I hope, for those of you who are here, I hope you come back. We will be doing Assassin's Creed 3 for a little bit. If it wasn't your thing, I completely understand as well. The best thing that I think any streamer can really ask for is a chance to entertain you. But sometimes if that matching doesn't work well, it's fine. It would be better that people stay with the things that they like. But for those of you who hung out tonight, I really appreciate it. And thank you for keeping me company while I explored Assassin's Creed 3 for the first time. As is usual tonight, we will host somebody. I think Kilgore Trout might be casting tonight, but let's take a quick look at what we've got. Yeah, sorry, Chess at 5. I'm actually quite a bit later than what I was planning on. What's the book called? The book is called A Struggle for Power by Theodore Draper. Thank you very much for that follow, Chesset. Also, guys, I tend to try and put the VODs up on YouTube, so if you guys like that sort of thing, I mean, the newer VODs should already be on Twitch, but I'll be honest, I prefer my stuff live, so I wouldn't expect you guys to do any differently. If you guys are interested, the schedule's down below and that, but I think tonight, actually, Warwitch TV is playing Darkest Dungeon, and I believe he is on the Crimson Court DLC, which I haven't seen yet, so I know it's a little bit of a change of pace from... Assassin's Creed 3, but he's a pretty good caster, which I hope you guys enjoy watching. You don't have to drop the raid message if you don't want, but I am going to be hosting him, and I'll see you guys there. I'll probably hang out for a few minutes before leaving. If I don't get to cast on Thursday, I will be on for Friday, but I'm going to do my best to cast tomorrow. So talk to you guys later. Have a good night.